No, we were trying to get out of the way so we could see each other. That's all.
Yeah,
I can shower.
that is what I was doing.
All right, I'm looking for a motion to resume. Oh, sorry, Vince, are you good?
We're fine.
Yeah,
We
okay.
could just note publicly that I've acknowledged that we have a quorum and we're back in regular session.
Okay,
for the
so I don't need
minutes.
to do a motion?
No.
Okay, well then I will note what Vince just said. Okay. Continue on to that.
Yeah.
Back to that. Okay. Mr. Whitberg, your first official full meeting, would you please read our mission statement?
The mission of Colesett High School, mission of Colesett Township Schools is to empower and inspire students to be confident, creative, self-sufficient learners who maximize their strengths and talents and contribute as responsible participants in their ever-expanding world.
Thank you very much. All right. All right, so the public should note that we have, being that we are reorganizing our board committees now that we do have a new board member. Those are,
Amy's on the call, so you recognize her.
oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
In attendance.
Yes, I will recognize her for the next roll call.
Okay,
Yes,
sure.
at this
Okay.
time.
Mhm.
Amy has joined remotely.
All right, so the public can note that going down the agenda, more about that when I get to my president's report. Also, we have our board liaisons and our new board member mentor. All right, approval. Yes, approval of the minutes. This throws me off when it's on the page. Approval of the minutes from May 29, 2024, which is our reorganizational and our regular meeting minutes. Can I please have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments about the meeting minutes from May 29th? No, all right, being that there are none, Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Yes, you may. Mrs. Denoyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon,
Yes.
recognizing Mrs. Dimes, who has joined remotely. Mrs. Dimes,
Yes.
thank you. Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Regnetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
Mr. Wickberg. Thank you. The motion did pass.
Thank you. All right, and that moves us on to our presentation. So I'll hand this part of the meeting over to Dr. Garber.
Thank you, President Ramirez, members of the Board of Education. You've received this information back in June, but this is more or less a formal presentation and an overview of our district goals. Why now? Because we're getting ready to move on and create and work together to establish our 24-25 goals. And remember, these are the things that collectively as a district, we work to identify areas where we want to see growth, where we want to see improvement, or where we want to see enhancements. For the time being, as we've talked about, what you'll see, many of the goals moving forward are linked not just only to student data, but also to our strategic plan. So they're actionable items from there. So I'm going to remain seated because the microphone is here right above me so that people can see. The presentation is being projected in front of us. So what as a reminder, there's a reason why we put the goals on the board agenda, right? Because when we're coming back and I'm making recommendations for board approval, and there are things that we're looking towards and working towards and approving, it may seem like regular business, but they're often tied to things and supporting things. And you saw that in the detailed evidence that are provided. I made reference to board agendas and different things where we approved staff for intervention programs, or we approved grants, or we approved all of those things. So our main 4 goals this year were linked in student achievement, community and communications, facilities, and staff engagement. So when we're going through those goals, and at the end of the year, there's a process, as you know, where I go through a self-evaluation, and then the board goes through an evaluation of those. And depending upon what happens that year, we either say that the goal that we set was either achieved, satisfactory progress made, it's a work in progress, more to come from them, depending upon what we come together to agree happened with this goal. Our goal with student achievement is one that we continue to work on. It's to implement supplemental intervention programs designed specifically to target areas of student performance in language arts and mathematics, for the purpose of yielding results on the 2024 spring NJSLA that restore all tested grade level scores to 2019 pre-pandemic scores or above. So that's a goal, right? That's a very specific goal, because we're looking to say, how we do in 2019 versus how are we doing in 2024. Those independent scores are coming, the independent student scores are coming, will be released soon. And when Dr. Reynolds does her district presentation in October, we're hoping to see some good results, and as we're looking, because we do a really good job, in my opinion, of those intervention programs. One thing that I do really enjoy, and we'll get to, about and admire about our intervention programs is that they're very specified. We use a lot of student data. We use Linkit, which is our data warehouse for our students, and we use a very prescribed model for providing intervention. And I always often equate it as we go through it. If you have a foot problem, you're not going to just a regular medical doctor, right? You're going to a specialist, you're going to a podiatrist. That's the theory behind targeted intervention that we apply to our students. If you're having problems with reading, I want to know what it is. What is it? Is it blends? Is it phonemic awareness? Is it comprehension? What is the specific problem? And we have tools and assessments in our district that allow us to inform the decisions that we make and tailorize, customize programs to support students' needs in literacy and math. So that's something we take a lot of pride in. We invest a lot of time in data analysis, and we continue to just want to do better and better for our students. So we determined, remember, that the goal was about the establishment of programs, and I apologize for the size of that font, but in terms, and I'm even sorrier that I don't have my other glasses with me. So in terms of student achievement, with regards to that, it was the implementation of those programs. And the purpose was to demonstrate an effort of the district to address student learning through the implementation of different programs, targeted intervention in content areas of mathematics, language arts. Additionally, data collected as evidence of this goal could also be used to measure the effectiveness of this supplemental materials. We don't just do a program, implement a program, and move on and be satisfied with that. We always want to say, to what do we want to always answer the question, to what are we attributing these results? Are we not addressing a specific standard? Is there a skill that's being missed? Was the content was not incorporated properly into a pacing guide? Whatever the case may be, we're always very reflective of what student results are telling us about the implementation of our curriculum. Because believe it or not, at the NJSLA, the Department of Education will say that the NJSLA is really a test of the district's implementation of its curriculum, right? Because curriculum isn't good if it's not being implemented correctly. And then we also in terms of the curriculum itself, it's also testing that, the resources that we're also using to implement the curriculum. So going forward, we've also used a tremendous amount of our ARP funds, ESSER funds, and competitive grants to fund programs. Right after the pandemic, we went after a competitive grant, the Accelerated Learning Loss Grant. We were the only district in Monmouth County to win that grant. It was about $130,000. We ran our summer bridge program through that. Carrying on through the years, we used ARP money, ESSER funds, to carry through multiple intervention programs after school for different areas, getting students caught up, and also different enrichment too. We didn't want to also just target our students maybe who needed some supports. We wanted to keep our enrichment students going too, and we offered that in multiple levels in science, music, we did all of those things. And then this year we also went after another competitive grant to continue our summer bridge program, which was the high impact tutoring grant, which was about a little over $38,000 that helped move that along as well. So in addition to summer bridge, we have not just tiered interventions that are taking place during the day. Many of them have, you've seen the sign-up sheets. There's fun names like, wait, I'll show you. I'll get to that in a second. I'm gonna skip through this a little bit here. Level Up Math, Mathletes, Readers Theaters, Mathsterminds, all of those things. And it sounds like, a lot of fun. Word Wizards, that's a fun thing for kids to sign up and have parents be a part of. But at the end of the day, one of them, CBMS, we had it was grammar and vocabulary boot camp, right? So those are the things though, but when they're open for students, many times, not only are they open for students, there's also a direct invite to students who need those additional supports, and they may also be receiving them during the day, so it's an extension of the school day for those types of interventions. So I just want to go back for a second. Some of the examples, when you're looking at, you hear a lot throughout the district, you hear multi-tiered systems of supports, tiered interventions. Those are all things you hear a lot when we're talking with Dr. Reynolds and curriculum, and also with Dr. Back, right? Because his programs feed into this as well. So the district programs and opportunities that we design are Tier 2 and Tier 3 are targeted intervention programs. They're supplemental or pull out, they're not replacement, okay? So if a child is identified for some support but not full replacement, it would fall into a category of a Tier 2 or Tier 3. Tier 1 classroom interventions are also Title I after-school programs and the Summer Bridge program, Some examples of the type of programs we run include our math tip program is skill specific, it's standard specific. And what I mean by that is when I was in school, and there was a 19 in the years when I went to school, by the way. So when I was in school, there was, you would have basic skills, right? And you would go and you would get like extra help, right? That's not necessarily the way we run our programs. In our math units, there's a pre-test, and depending upon how students perform in their pre-tests, they're then identified for additional supports. It's also how we identify our enrichment students when it comes time to do that. That there's an availability if students if they're in Unit 3 and they're doing well, they've mastered the pre-test, well, you know what, they don't have to, we can challenge them, we can send them somewhere else and for a type of enrichment, which we also run in a tiered category as well. We use a Norton-Gillingham phonics-based decoding program. We also use LLI, or level of literacy, for comprehension and fluency-based, and then we also have writing tip units. Okay, so we already went through that. And then we have the Summer Bridge. So are we meeting our goal? So we don't have our 2024 disaggregated data yet. So this is what we're looking at with regards to our district summary achievements. So this is grade 3 through 8 mathematics. And if anyone wants to move to see better, you're more than welcome to. This is a combination. You can see from left to right, it's grades 3 through grade 8, which also includes algebra. The farthest bar graph on the side is on the right is all math combined, okay? In each of the individual columns, the column in the lightest blue all the way to the left represents 2019 scores. Then remember, there was no NJSLA in 2020, nor was there NJSLA in 2021. It didn't resume until the spring of 2022. So the middle bar represents the first year of NJSLA in our district, math, 3 through 8, post-pandemic, okay? These are all of our, and it's the same students, so it's the same grade levels. So grade level, and so the students who were in grade 3 in that bar were in grade 4 in the middle, in the next bar, and now they're in grade 5. So if you were following the cohort along, you have to move across the bars. These are same grade level implementations, okay? Did you? So third grade all the way to the end, right, on the left. Those are third graders in 2019, right? The middle bar, actually you have to skip 2 because there wasn't, so if you skip 2 bar graphs over, now they're in 4th grade, right? And then the following they're in the 5th grade. Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
So if you're looking at how we did in 2023, you can see that we are very anxious to see how we did in 2024. Because in comparative, if we have a goal to restore where we were in 3rd grade, the first year we implemented after the pandemic, we actually exceeded pre-pandemic scores, okay? And then math in all grades, that's a combined, so, that, to me, we like to look at each and every grade, but at the end of the day, combined, we did exceed those scores, but that's in 2023.
Can you, is this on the website or?
You're gonna see it, and then we're gonna put it out there, yes.
Oh,
as well.
okay, that's fine,
Yeah.
because I really can't see this, right?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not complaining, I'm really blind.
No, I hear you, and I apologize for that. Okay, so this is it more disaggregated in comparison. How are we doing? Okay, so if you look at our performance reports, the Colson Township schools are the 3 bars on the left-hand side. You go across, the first set of bar graphs you get to are all counties and all school districts in Monmouth County that took the NJSLA. Again, the first bar represents pre-pandemic. the middle one and the one to the right represent 2022 and 2023, okay? So in looking at the county, in looking at the DFG, that's considered a district factor group I, which they don't necessarily give out. We have to kind of seek that out based on the groups. That's the same economic environment, correct? It's not size, it's based on socioeconomic status of the district. And then the state of New Jersey is the last bar. So in all three of those areas, while we still have areas of growth, we still have room to go, and we still have areas that we can continue to improve upon, in those three areas combined, Monmouth County, DFG, and state, we're doing well, right, when you look at the comparison. And not that it's supposed to be competitive, but anyone who knows me knows differently. So, I'm sorry, any questions on mathematics? Where we are? Now remember, we're anxious to see where we're going in 2024, right? And that'll come in October, so we'll continue that conversation. Look at those trends, right? Different groups of students, different groups of things, but then we're gonna look at that as we move on.
I have two questions. My name is Brian.
This,
During public comment, you can ask questions or feel free to reach out to Mary Jane directly.
okay, so comparison groups, this is now, we're gonna go on to language arts, okay? So this is language arts, again, the same pattern, right? The bar on the left represents 2019, middle is 2022, and the one on the right represents 2023. And it goes in line of the grade levels, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then all ELA. So, that's an area we want, we're looking at, right? We want to make sure that when we're looking at this, we're looking at what programs are we using, what interventions are needed. And then don't also forget, you've heard Dr. Reynolds say, you've heard me say, each number, there's a kid in a story behind each and every one of those numbers. So that's the one thing that we always, when you're looking at, grade 8, 2023, right? And you're looking at or 2022, and you say, all right, what was the makeup of that class, right? What was their, what was the I can leave it at that. You look at who are the kids, what have been what's been their growth throughout the years, what programs, what has their attendance been like, what has been their help. We look at everything, and that's a beauty of Linkit, because Linkit provides a lot of data that helps us make informed decisions, not just about the implementation of our curriculum, but the trends. Another thing that Linkit will do as well is do year after year for each child. So we can watch, if not just on NJSLA, because this is only one small piece of data that we use. It's the most public piece of data, right? Because our fontes and Pinel are not on a state website somewhere. Our unit tests for mathematics are not on a state test. But the NJSLA is supposed to be a standardized test that says whatever curriculum you're using, your kids should be on grade level by the end of it. So this is for our language arts.
Can I get up? I just wanted
Yeah, of course, of course.
Can I ask you a question? Like I said,
Yeah, no, go
this
ahead.
is so
No, absolutely.
already- The grade A, 8, the middle column.
Yeah.
I can't, so they dropped significantly that year.
Significantly.
And I may have missed it when you were speaking, but did you figure out, overall, what was the issue in that grade?
So I'm gonna tell you.
Okay.
In 8th grade, in mathematics, that year, when we were coming out, and I have to go back if it was just last year, or if it was the beginning of that year, we never had a true intervention program in ELA at middle school. We had it for math. We didn't have it in ELA. We had enrichment, almost like a gifted and talented level class.
Okay.
So one of the things we looked to do was provide additional academic support in a true pull-out type of tier 1 or tier 3 model.
That made the difference.
I mean, we're still asking that question because we want to see year-over-year trends, obviously. But when you're implementing something, if it drops again, okay, what are we doing differently? But to see the significant where you're up, right, and then down and then up again, you do want to say that what we're doing as an intervention model is helping. It might not be the only factor, right, because we're also looking at, we're always rewriting curriculum, they're working on assessments, they're working through math. So there's a lot of different things, and you never want to say, yeah, this was it, right, that did it. But it's a contributor. It's a factor that's taken into consideration whenever we're seeing either gains, losses, and when we're remaining stagnant, right? If we're not growing year over year and we've got potential for kids to do that, we want to say, all right, what can we do to tweak this a little bit and to change the results if we want to improve them? Okay? Yeah. Yep. Yes. So here's that same comparison, NJSLA for ELA. Okay? Cold Snake Township Schools in general, and then moving through for the 3 columns, 2019, 2022, 2023, and then moving over the County of Monmouth, DFGI, and then the State of New Jersey.
What do you anticipate 2024?
What do I anticipate?
Feeling from the director of curriculum and teacher feedback?
If I'm wearing my, I am so deeply grateful for all the work that's being done in this district. I will tell you in terms of our intervention, I think our teachers, the board's commitment to the intervention programs, small class sizes, everything that we do, I think contribute to it. I think that we've made some curricular resource changes from that. I think I'm hoping to see some significant growth in middle school in mathematics, and that's getting there. We put a lot of effort in. Our math coach works very closely with all of our teachers to provide that embedded professional development, that sustained professional development. So it's not like a model where our teachers go out, learn about math instruction and then leave. They have it every day embedded, which is so important for that support. So I'm hopeful, I'm hopeful.
Great.
Yeah, and I don't say hopeful, I'm really optimistic, because I think I'm looking for consistency and growth, and then working towards everything, that plays into that. So in October, stay tuned and to be continued, right? Okay, so I don't want to take up, or 2. Goal 2 is community and communicate. I'm sorry, any questions on goal 1 from the board? Okay. Goal 2 was community and communications. We wanted to enhance this. This is another one of things that we talked about with regards to that we really learned a lot through our parent advisory, our parent academies. We started saying our schools are open, right? They're open and they're community, and they were a busy place with our parents. And one of the things that I heard from one of our parents at advisory I thought was so well said. During the pandemic, parents were left out. They were disconnected from our schools, right? You had to go through a process to come in. There were a lot of measures in place and so on and so forth. And we want to re-engage and re-welcome our parents into our district, right? And have that set of purpose that they are a welcome addition, their voice is heard, they're being reflective, the feedback, and then we're providing opportunities for them to engage with us. So we did 2 things. We had our parent academies and the parent advisory committee. The parent academies are going to make, as well as the advisories, will make a comeback for the 24-25 school year. And as I said, those were the 2 pieces of evidence for it. Goal 3 is facilities. I don't think I've talked more about facilities in the past year and a half than I have in my whole life. But that said, what fantastic work is being done in addition to the ESIP, right? Because we do a lot in addition. Keep in mind, the work that's being done through our Energy Savings Improvement Plan, as Mr. Walsh has reported out, is the largest project that's happened to the district since the primary school. And the condensers for air conditioning at Cedar Drive were tested last week, and they all worked. I believe on Friday or Tuesday, they're being turned on at elementary school.
Awesome.
And then we just have a little repair at primary school. We'll get through that. It's fine. It's fine. But we are doing a lot. But it's not just about the stuff that's it's about the students' learning environment, right? It's about the work environment we provide for our staff, and it's about, more importantly, the learning environment that we create for our students. So this goal is actually tied to the strategic plan, which is Whole Child Wellness, and through that action plan, it was to create indoor and outdoor learning communities that foster healthy, safe, engaging, and balanced personal development. So we talked about those things and look to always to partner with our PTO and where we can be making those improvements. In addition to so what's the evidence we're looking at? We look to continue to use budget as well as PTO, grants, all of the things to say. So this goal, we said, is satisfactory. You know why? Because there's so much more that we can do, right? There's outdoor spaces we can be exploring. There's continued improvements to our grounds we can be making. So we're not done yet with that. That's not a checked list at all. And I'm just highlighting some of the things that we've done outside. The courtyard was a huge hit with our students this year at elementary school. That's actually a putting green in the courtyard that's also used as an outdoor learning space. The flexible seating down in the bottom left-hand corner is seen all through the district and in multiple classrooms, On the top left and towards the middle there was a significant improvement to the playground, investment to the playground behind the primary school. And then something as simple really has made a difference, which are standing desks. We're a huge investment at Cedar Drive, where students can stand around and do their work, get some movement around, all the things like that, and collaborate. So that's underneath, that's then collapsed, and then on top the teachers can have certain areas throughout the classroom where they're working. So it was a nice enhancement. The last one is staff engagement, and this is again satisfactory progress made because we still want to do more. We have a lot of committees. We have a lot of research, their professional development plans, mentoring plans. We have our Title I ESEA surveys, getting input, all the safety and security teams, our SKIP, which is our school improvement committee, all of the things that staff, we have committees that staff participate on. We want to do more, right? We want to make sure that collaboratively we're working as a team to provide the best environment, their resources, everything that they need for them. So that's their curriculum involvement. Their work with data is second to none, but still looking at them as the experts in the room and in their fields and with their chronological ages that each respectively work with, and looking for them to really enhance and what ideas they have. That's something that we really encourage in this district. Our teachers have great ideas, and working with them collaboratively to support them in what they want to do is important. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, we won a National School Boards Association from an idea that came from a staff member in this district. And it was her idea. She worked together collaboratively with the team. We implemented it, and it's doing, that's the kind of work we love. So, what's next? Development of the 24-25 district goals. What we're going to do is have an analysis of student data, stakeholder input, the staff, BOE, et cetera, taking recommendations from our parent advisory, all of the things. Continue with prior year goals where satisfactory progress was made, combining them into the new goals as well. We're going to continue to review the strategic plan for actionable plan goals. And then in October, see a recommendation for our 24-25 goals. Any questions from the board? I don't mind taking questions.
If you're comfortable.
I'm fine answering, but if
Okay.
you'd like, that's fine. If you'd like to ask your question.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, that's perfectly fine, I appreciate it. Brian Scott, very nice to have you here today, thank you. Just a couple questions, actually wrote them down while we're speaking. Why, in your experiences, is like a general degradation in student performance across the years, grade 3 to 8? Now, I know that going across the years, it's generally improved. With 3 to 8, you see general degradation. That's like a negative yield curve. So if you're an investor, you wouldn't invest in a negative yield curve. Why, in your experience, do you see a decline in grade 8?
Well, there are different standards. There's different curriculum. There's different, the grade levels the content becomes more difficult. The skill becomes more detailed. So I think that sometimes we become accustomed. When I first started here, are you talking about back in, like here? Like in math?
Exactly. Just generally speaking.
Yeah.
Put the curve across the top.
Right. So generally speaking, yep, I can absolutely speak to this. I would rather, that's why I pulled this up, because this is a good specific example to look at. So up until 6th grade, up until students reach 6th grade, students are all in the same math class. They're all in the same class. So a 3rd grade math class is a 3rd grade math class, unless they're, and then they get supports or enrichment through either target intervention or they receive it enrichment, if that's what they need. When you get to 6th grade, the students split, and they have an opportunity of a pre-algebra or a grade level math, okay? And that continues in 7th grade, where they actually then can take they stay with their grade level. They can take a pre-algebra type of class, or they can actually take algebra, that's our accelerated group. So in 7th grade, they're taking their high school algebra class. Then in 8th grade, that continues. So we have our grade level students, our algebra, which is kind of, I don't want to say it's like an advanced algebra, but a type of a faster paced algebra, regular algebra, and then geometry. So if you look, geometry is not counted in NJSLA scores. So if you look at that decline, as you were talking about in terms of scores, it starts to get segmented a little bit, and we break out into more homogeneous groupings in mathematics. And I think that there's a theory that when we do that, sometimes there's pros and cons to that, right? Because if you're taking students who are leaders maybe in the classrooms in the early elementary grades and you're putting them at a faster paced, more appropriate learning level, or introducing them to content that they're developmentally ready to receive and interpret, that sometimes you're creating homogeneous classrooms, that sometimes will reflect in the scores, because the one before the edge are the actual Algebra 1. Now those Algebra 1 that's included of our 7th grade and all of the 8th graders, so that's a mix of 7th and 8th graders. When Dr. Reynolds does her presentation in October, we actually break down how many students in 7th grade took algebra, how many took them in 8th grade, and then how many in geometry. So you get a better picture of the actual number of students who are participating in those areas.
Do you have the data to support behind those numbers? Because like, this is a lot, but that clarification means a lot. So there's more data behind it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that talks about-
Oh, absolutely.
So you break that out to show, hey, if you chose this course, these are the numbers, where if you chose these courses, these are the numbers. And I understand that content is getting more difficult as the years proceed, but so should the maturation level of a student. So a 6th grader is going to think differently than a 3rd grader.
Sure.
So they should be inclined to do better on their exams, not worse.
Sure.
How is that represented in these numbers?
How is it represented in terms of their developmental
Yes.
maturity and test taking and high stakes tests?
Well,
I'm just, in terms of, so it's a good question. That's a good question that I would love to have an opportunity to ponder on more. Off the top of my head, I'd have to dig more into that. I think that you have to look at transition years. You have to look at in terms of, we've done a lot of work working with our students to talk about how this is a reflection of our implementation of the curriculum, but in terms of how the average 6th grader would we want them to encourage them to do well. We also have, we offer parents the right to opt out of high stakes testing as well, or state testing. So this is the state's measurement of how we're doing, but when we're looking at like our NWA MAP test scores, we're looking at our unit tests in mathematics, there's another story oftentimes behind that. As a matter of fact, when we're at MAP testing, sometimes we'll see a student that just doesn't want to, maybe not want to take a test that day for that, but yet in MAP they scored high. MAP's not the public indicator of where they're going, and we may know the student on a much more intimate level in the classroom, right? And then we'll dig deeper into that data to kind of say, okay, what's going on here? Because we have multiple measures of assessments, and we look at it, we say, all right, what went on here in this one, or where was that? So I think it's a great question. Yeah.
Something?
Sure.
I just wanted to clarify, what you're saying is basically most of the high performers that you may have found mixed in with the scores of grades 3 through 6, or 3 through 5, are now being pulled out and causing those high scores in algebra. That's why you're seeing the dip down, because the percentages are being pulled into that algebra score, and
It's a theory.
not lower
It's-
performers, but it kind of would make sense that maybe it would stay a little bit more streamlined across the board if those higher performers were still in the same classes, taking the same tests as those other kids. That's what I'm saying, that's the way that I'm seeing it.
Perhaps it's a theory. I mean, it's a theory, but I do think the content gets more, difficult, and I think that
I'm
that's,
sure it's a
yeah.
combination of
It's a
both,
combination
but-
of different things. It also depends on the makeups of classes, and there's a lot that goes into answering that question, so I would love an opportunity to ponder it more and get back to it with you. Any questions?
Just a follow-up, do these numbers reflect, or probably separate category, but my understanding, the SLA test is something that students can opt out of. So does it reflect in these, is there a correlation with the amount of students that opt out of the testing versus correlation of the numbers decreasing?
So we keep that internally.
Okay.
No. It usually doesn't. We usually will have it, I mean, we could never say, because if
Yeah.
we have a student that, if we have a student in algebra, or 5 students in algebra that, do extremely well, and then there's it's actually referred to as a refusal. It's not an opt-out, it's a refusal.
Refusal, okay.
Yeah. So we would think that all other indicators would have them meeting or exceeding standards on the NJSLA, but it's not reflected in the data. So it's not, NJSLA is not a perfect indicator, which is why it's so important to have good, solid assessments, internal, local assessments that we use that compare, predict, all of the same things. NWBA map, which we use, is a predictor, and it aligns to that. So that is something, it gives the same grade level standards as we're working at. So that's, it becomes probably one of our most reliable predictors. And as we work with Dr. Reynolds, the instructional coaches, and the teachers, when we start to identify students for a TIP or a TEP, right, we look at those projections. That's what they say. If a child stays on the same course of NWBA math throughout the year, they could say they'll likely score in this range for the NJSLA. So then we'll start to identify students in February and early in the year. We'll say, well, maybe, they're heading on a trajectory here that we're going to want to add some supports and work with the families to get them some supports before the end of the year. Not just for the test, and I mean that wholeheartedly, and I say when I joke around being competitive, but it's more about because it's a measurement of end of year knowledge of your current grade level standards. So that's where.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Mrs. Ramirez, thank you.
You're
very
very
much, and
welcome.
members
Thank
of the board.
you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'm gonna clap.
Oh, cool. I like it.
All right, moving right along. And so you will see on the agenda tonight, there is a communication, and that brings me to my report of the president. All right. Good evening and welcome to tonight's Board of Education meeting. As we approach the end of the summer, I hope everyone here and in our community has had an opportunity to enjoy our New Jersey weather, our beaches, all of the fun that the state has to offer with your friends, family, and loved ones. Tonight you will notice the reorganization of our board committees. This reorganization reflects the recent addition of our newly appointed board member and aims to ensure that all board members have had the opportunity to contribute meaningfully across the committees. We focused on aligning committee assignments with each board member's strengths as well as their willingness and ability to volunteer their time. This year has brought significant changes to our committee structures, and we are still navigating these adjustments. I want to thank the public for your patience during this time, and I especially appreciate the patience and effort of each board member as we continue to refine our approach moving forward. Looking ahead, our next meeting, I'm so sorry, one more note on the reorg. Tonight, during the committee reports, I'm going to kind of bounce back and forth between our former assignments and tonight's assignments. Some of them are the same, but just because some of the meetings that may have happened between last meeting and this meeting, if there was any changes in the reorg, you might see me calling on a couple of different people, so just make note of that. Looking ahead for our next meeting, I wanted to make the public aware of how our next meeting will be conducted. It will be conducted in a work session format. This means that there will be no business session unless, of course, there is an emergency need for a personnel or a finance issue, then we reserve the right to have that. But as of right now, we're really trying to have this just be a work session. Instead, we will concentrate on the important work that typically happens within our committees. This will have input from our administrators during this meeting. And given that we have had limited committee meetings this year, combined with the start of the new school year and the hustle and bustle that goes along with that uptick in legislative activity, we do anticipate that that will be a lengthy and in-depth session. So for the public to make note of that if you plan on coming and participating with us. This will be our first true work session, and it follows our recent discussions about whether to remain a committee of a whole or to return to a traditional committee structure. To assist us in this process, I have invited Tim Tehan, our New Jersey School Board Association field representative, to guide us through the process and discussions and help us make informed decisions as it relates to the structure of the board. As always, there will be an opportunity for public comment during the meeting. It will take place prior to the actual work session business that we will all be discussing. And as always, always, we value the input and encourage the public to share their thoughts with us as a board. So on that, thank you for all being here tonight, and now we can proceed with the rest of our agenda. All right, so committee reports. Kevin, buildings and ground safety and security.
Big item that came up that was, needed to be addressed quickly and for the benefit of the children, for the new school year, the primary school, or condensing units, HVAC units that needs to be fixed. There are 5 units in total, I believe. And long story short, the building management system installation at the primary school identified issues with the condensing units. Not efficiently cooling down the second grade wing of the classrooms. They need to be fixed. I requested as a chair for the building and grounds for Vince and Nick to provide a report to all the board members to really give you a really good explanation and the critical need to have it fixed. And I'm in full support of that, and I really appreciate the report that you provided to the board. I appreciate your time and Nick's time as well. So it's critical it's addressed and fixed prior to the school year, which is next week. And it gives you excellent summary. Some of it you have to be an engineer to understand,
Yes.
to be honest with you. But the big picture is we need to get this done for the benefit of the kids and the teachers in the class. It also is part, the ESIP comes to an end, which is still ongoing. It falls under retro commissioning, which some of the funds are reserved to be applied to areas that need to be fixed. In this instance, it's 23 years old, the primary school. The units are old. There may be other units, HVAC units, and other schools that are going to need to be attended to as well. But as chair, I thought it was really a priority and urgent that I reached out to our facility manager through an administration. And Vince was great, Nick was great, and so I'm full support of getting that fixed before September 5th. I don't know how that formally works as far as transferring the funds, if it's a vote involved as a board, I'm not sure. Everything else is going exceptionally well. The project is moving per plan, on time. Not only is the infrastructure being upgraded, the HVAC units, the LED lighting in the classroom, the corking of all the windows, the benefit, also side benefits of the courtyards being cleaned, trees being cleared away. It's making the whole campus, school campus, look very nice. And it's a pride that all the parents can take really to be proud of the project that was started by a prior board and making our school community look the way it should look. So again, my thanks are to Vince, Nick, Dr. Garabay for managing this system every day, managing the project every day. I come and go for reports, but the true workers for our schools are administrators, the facility managers. So my kudos to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Any questions or comments for Kevin?
Yeah, Kevin, I wanted to ask you, remember the student liaison, Sean, he had mentioned in the Cedar Drive laboratory about putting dividers in, for the young gentlemen in there, that, a lot of kids, were requesting that, and during our walkthrough, Mr. Moretta said that we would look into it if we had the funds, and I was just wondering if anything came about with that.
And the bathrooms are going to be renovated.
Oh, okay, so they're just completely gonna be renovated, okay.
Certain
ones.
Oh,
bathrooms.
certain ones, okay. I just figured, I know that was in.
Specific, I can't really speak for the dividers. I'm unsure about that.
I can look into that.
It's part of the process
Yeah.
we'll look into and adding.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
yeah.
fine, I just
Yep.
know that,
It's on
he
the
had made a big thing, and he,
Mhm.
came to the
Yeah.
floor with it, and I'd like to see it done if we have the
Options.
funds,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
But the big picture is they're really doing upgrades in all the schools, bathrooms included. He even remembered a comment I had my first tour of the girls' locker room,
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
they fixed it.
Oh, the paint
Yeah,
and
they're
everything,
fixing it,
right?
yeah.
The floor,
They didn't
yeah, the
forget.
floor,
They
that's
did.
right, yeah.
So the detail is really good.
I think Amy has a
Yes, Amy had a
or
question.
comment.
I just, I don't know if it's more appropriate for Mr. Walsh to speak to it or Mr. Arico, but I thought it was very helpful and insightful in the email that we received to explain the tax impact for the upgrades that are needed for air conditioning. It's kind of interesting that we finally got air conditioning for our older grades and the ones in our younger grades are now failing. So I think it's just important, perhaps if it's Mr. Arico that could speak to it or Mr. Walsh, just on what that tax impact will be, because it was great to see that email come out and all the information and how quickly both Mr. Walsh and Mr. Arico and our administration really worked to get that fixed. So I'm very appreciative of it, but I also think that some of the additional information that was in that email may be helpful to speak to.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can speak to that if you'd like to.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Mr. Vico is not here, Amy.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep. Mary Jane.
So in the email, I just clarified when we sent the report to the board today, earlier today, that there's a resolution on finance for a withdrawal of $60,000 in maintenance reserve. That is not us going to the taxpayers to say we need another $60,000. We're not allowed to do that. These are monies that are already in our reserve, that have been built up through time. And so this is an allowable use of a withdrawal, which requires board approval. Any withdrawal from our reserves require board approval. So this is a use of that. And as Mr. Walsh said, that there is conversation with DCO, our energy savings company, who is managing our ESIP. There's so many letters in education, like so many acronyms in terms of managing it, that because it is retro commissioning, meaning they were not included in the original project, but we took the option of saying in the retrofitting or commissioning as we're upgrading our systems, if things need to be addressed or improved along the way, that there could be funds that are used at the end of the project left over and applied to things like this. So this project may be eligible for something like that at the very end, as you said.
You may get credit for it.
We may get some credit back for it, exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Kevin? No? All right.
Security, I forgot.
Oh, yes.
Is that included, right?
Yes.
I know Dr. Garibay is setting up a meeting with the new chief of police, Daniel DeVito. I mean, he was a little kid on the department, literally. So I'm looking forward to meeting him with the whole board of building and ground security. So we can meet him in person, and any questions you have as committee members, feel free to ask him that time.
And then I think we also pointed out that on September 25th, Mr. Greg Burns from DCO is going to be giving a public presentation on the upgrades itself through the ESIP. So a full public presentation, which will will be on September 25th.
Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about that. Yeah. All right. Communications. So while the public will see, it's Amy Dimes on here. Amy, I'm just going to let Vincent update, and then if there's anything you wanted to add to it, I'll bounce it back to you. So.
Yeah, we had a great meeting yesterday, nice long, extensive meeting yesterday.
We did.
Jessica was there, and Angelique was remote. And we got great feedback from Nick and Phil. First thing, for our live, YouTube live, getting more microphones and more extensive system for us so people watching can hear us. We went through all of that, all the different items that we would need for that, especially all of us being able to have a microphone, mostly each of us having a microphone for the public as well too, to speak into. And all the costs, looks like it's going to be a little bit below $2,000 right now, which, as being a musician, I know the cost of equipment like that, and that's a really good price, being able to get. And Ms. Marasco, I think, is going to look into finding the funds for that, where that would go, to be able to do that again, so we don't have to do a tax increase or anything like that for that. We also talked about the password situation that was brought up last weekend. As of right now, there was an incident about 2 years ago where a child was able to get into another child's system, care of and by the administration, and the passwords of how passwords are going into the system now or have been changed and been modified to be a bit more security sensitive. And something else you want to add?
No.
If I can just add,
Yes.
post the meeting, Mr. Pachola wanted me to add, and Mr. Capasso, that they're looking into even more, like
Yeah.
in terms of after post of
Yeah.
our conversation, what are additional options for
Yeah,
them?
and for as far as ID badges and be able to get a password off of that, it's harder now because there's no longer your student's ID is no longer on the ID badge, it's a barcode, so no one's gonna be able to find it on that. And the password, you do your password. There's 3 different sections of that password, and which makes it even harder to find. I'm not gonna go into details of what that is. But I was also asking about if there's any way to have the password be sensitive to just the individual child's Chromebook, which is not practical, because say if a child forgets their Chromebook at home or forgets it anywhere else, or if their Chromebook is misplaced or is damaged, and they need to use a different Chromebook, they wouldn't be able to get into to new Chromebook right away, and they wouldn't be able to do their schoolwork for the day or their homework. And also, parents wouldn't be able to get access to their child's information as well either, if that would be the case.
Yes, and I think that's, yeah, that's another good discussion. And then we talked about the Chromebook usage.
Oh, okay.
You may touch on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about, some of the concerns with the web filtering and how children, what they have access to, what the students have access to, and then even a layer further for the staff. And so we were briefed on what that process looks like, what the companies are that we're using, and then continuing to look into how we can better filter that, which is an ongoing process from what it sounds like. And then we just also touched on the screen time. And, it's an ongoing conversation. We're still trying to find ways to specifically track the students' usage on the screens, so that if there are any policies that we need to implement, we can do that. But it's difficult to track the exact time that a student is logged in and actively using their Chromebooks, but it's ongoing, so we'll continue to update on that.
With the web filtering, if a child is looking up anything inappropriate that it's not been blocked, any keywords or anything like that they're looking up will go to administration, and they'll be able to notify parents and also be able to block that news site as well.
Amy, you have a question?
Amy, did you have a question?
No? Okay, I thought I heard a beep. All right. Amy, do you want to add anything about anything in the future for Communications Committee?
I don't think anything right now for the future. I would like to, I liked Vinny's input on changing the passwords, because I know that was something that we kind of touched on last week, that if there was a concern. So I appreciate the insight on that it could actually make it more difficult for the children and the parents if they have the access to it. But I do think that I would like in our work session next week to talk about reinstating the coffee chats, especially with the ESIP. That was very helpful last year. We did a presentation during the coffee chat where it was an informal conversation about where we were at and the funds and how they were being used. So I think that would be great too if we could reinstate those coffee chats, and I would plan on probably discussing that during the work session. And I'm very happy to hear about the microphones and that we got some new quotes for that. That seems actually reasonable, and I have all trust in Vince that we will be able to figure out how to allocate those funds. So thank you.
Pressure, Ms. Rich.
And thank you, Vinny.
You are.
I've had worse.
Ms. Volpe, I did add good point to the passwords. That again, that there's 3 different points to the passwords, 2 different keys that go into the child's passwords. And 2 of the keys that go into the child's passwords are pretty easily known by other children. The 3rd key is not as easily known. Maybe we can add a 4th key part of that password down the road as well too.
Yeah. has options, I feel
Yes.
like, yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Vinny? No? All right. Curriculum. So, Brenna, I don't have much to say. We did not meet, as I reported out at our last board meeting. We did have our completed curriculum that Dr. Erica Reynolds had sent to us. I had sent out to see if curriculum committee wanted to meet. We did not. And so it wasn't that extensive. And so you'll see on the agenda tonight under curriculum, item number 3 is the approval of the adoption of that new curriculum, which was completed. So that's all that I have on that. Brenna, would you like to add anything? Are you
No,
looking
I mean,
forward to
on an
next meeting?
aside, I just wanted to say thank you for all the consideration in these new committee spots and chair roles. I'm really excited to be curriculum chairperson. I'm excited to work with Dr. Reynolds again. And I guess for the next meeting, since our next public meeting will be a work session, I'm just wondering, like, should we be trying to get a more intimate committee meeting going before then? Or do you think it's best to just kind of touch base with the administrator before the work session, see what's going to be discussed there, and then take from there?
That's what I think
Yeah,
is best.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's what I think is best, is to touch base with the administrator.
Yeah.
But if there's something that's pressing and there is a need for a committee meeting, absolutely,
Okay.
go for it. I think that's important. We shouldn't be holding up the work until that work session if something needs to be done. But certainly if there's something that's pressing, I think it can wait until then. But yes, you're going to be working with the administrator to put together that agenda for the work session. So that's all completed. So that can kind of act as your committee meeting unless, like I said, there's something pressing.
Did you have a question, Amy?
I did. Will we have the administrators present at the work session? Because I do think that they are helpful during the committee meetings.
Contingent upon availability.
Yeah.
Okay.
Vince and I.
Ideally, that is what I foresee happening.
If one of the issues we want to bring up is going to be, they're going to be key to it.
Right. So again, this is all part of our ongoing work to structure our board. And so one of the, concerns for a committee of a whole is when we're having these work sessions, some of our administrators may or may not be able to be present. So that's a challenge that we would meet. There's pros and cons in either direction. So I think is, contingent on availability, we'll have them there. But ideally, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's why it's even more important for you to reach out to them prior to.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Brenna. Finance and negotiations. So Jason is not here this evening, unfortunately, but Jason did tell me, Kevin, I hope he told you, that you might have some updates for finance and negotiations.
I'm sorry, Jess?
Jason said that he gave you some updates for finance and negotiations.
No, I
No?
didn't get specific information.
Okay.
I hope I'm not misrepresenting
Okay.
what he was
He didn't.
telling you.
All right. Well, that's what
Other
he told
than
me. But
maybe possibly the financial impact of
For
the
the
HVAC,
yeah, the
which
HVAC,
is
yeah.
probably,
which we've already
we
touched
did
on.
have, yes. we
Yes.
did.
All right. All right, so then we will move on to policy, which is me again. So we have not had any meeting since our last one, which I reported out, last Board of Ed meeting was very lengthy. But again, you will see on the agenda this evening the adoption of those 17 policies. And that's all. There will likely be some more alerts coming down the pipeline, and I don't anticipate any meetings prior to the work session. So I think anything that we need to discuss will take place during that work session for policy.
And the new alert has been linked into the update?
Yes.
233, so
Yes.
they're.
And yes, and for the board, the updates that Mary Jane provides for us, the updates for the policies are in there. Yes. Any questions or comments for me? Okay. Advocacy. Angelique, is there anything that has taken place thus far?
Well, I didn't prepare a statement because I did not want it to infringe on Mrs. Dumont's time, but I did prepare a statement that I just wanted to put out to the public.
Okay.
I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm disappointed that I was removed from this chair position on the advocacy committee, but I would like to reiterate that I will still stay steadfast in my commitment to the parents and children of this district. I will continue to advocate and keep parental rights at the forefront, along with always searching for the best educational opportunities for all of our kids. I will continue to make it a priority to keep government overreach out of our education system, and I want to wish Mrs. Denoy well in leading the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Allison, is there anything that you would like to report out on, or anything you see forthcoming?
I will connect with Dr. Garibay and Dr. Beck
Mhm.
and see where the direction we need to go as a district and how we want to work moving forward in our work. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for either Angelique or Allison? No? All right, thank you. That brings us to Vinnie for the ad hoc committee.
Nothing to report this time, but looking forward to once the school year starts.
I'm sure it will be then. Any questions for Vinnie for ad hoc? No? All right. Liaison positions. Again, I'm going to kind of teeter back and forth here for some of them. Parent Advisory Committee.
Nothing to report right now. Hoping to touch base with Dr. Garibay, over the next week before the true chaos starts to kind of see what the game plan is in terms of starting things back up again.
Great. Any questions for Brenna? No. PTO, Amy, anything? If you don't have anything now, I'm sure you will in another week.
No, I do have something. So the PTO, they took their very, very short summer break and they are back in full swing. Registration is open for the PTO membership. I do encourage all board members to become PTO members. Even if you do not have a child in the district, you can sign up under your board email. The PTO typically has a rate of 50% participation, and I would really love to get 100% participation from our board members as a show that we do support and are committed to our community. PTO just does so much good work that is in synergy with what the board does. They also have their Spiritware store open, and I do apologize, I'm in a car ride home from the airport, but I believe it closes on September 4th, if I'm not mistaken. It's 4th or 5th. They've redesigned a ton of their Spiritware. It looks really great. I added a lot of stuff to my cart, so really excited about that. And I'm sure that in the upcoming weeks, they will have a lot more information on upcoming events that they will be hosting this year.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Amy?
How's the merch? Is it good?
It's cute.
Okay.
It's cute.
Good to know.
Yeah.
The merch is super cute. They have a lot of new designs. It's really nice. And they have umbrellas this year, which is, if you know any teachers that stand out and do that duty, the pick up and drop off, I'm sure that they would love for you to, get them an umbrella.
I have no doubt that you were getting that umbrella.
All right, thank you, Amy. Township Committee. Looking forward, all of our meetings align with the Township Committee. So unfortunately, I don't believe myself or Tara will be able to attend each other's meetings. But just some fun updates. Tomorrow night is the last concert series taking place for the summer concert series because summer is over. Colts Neck Polo event is September 8th. And National Night Out was actually rescheduled, which I was super excited about, for Saturday, September 28th between 4 and 7 p.m. It's a Saturday, yeah. And that's going to also be the same night of the Camp Out and Movie Night, which is sponsored by the Recreation Department. So it's going to be a really long, fun night for our district on, again, September 28th. And that's really all I have for About Township. There's lots of fun stuff going on over there, so if you don't want to come to one of our meetings and you want to go to one of theirs, feel free to do so. And back to Kevin. Oh, sorry, any questions for me? Okay, good, 'cause I probably didn't have the answer. Yes. Kevin, back to seniors.
I encourage all the senior citizens watching us tonight to come to our meetings, our board meetings. It's really critical that you're involved. You're on fixed incomes. We, as a board, of course, we want to be fiscally responsible, but we also want to give the best education and support to our kids. So I think it would be a great, if they can come to the meetings, I really encourage it and really love to have a dialogue and see what's going on in person other than watching the remote.
All right. Any questions for Kevin? All right. School Boards Association representative. Angelique, was there anything, any work that you had done
I
prior
did
to?
not prepare anything, no.
Okay. And then Allison, anything forthcoming?
Just a couple things. Tomorrow at 1 PM on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, you can catch up with New Jersey school boards. There's a podcast with Ray Pinney and the Speaker of the Assembly, Craig Coughlin. They're discussing school funding issues, teacher shortage, and more. So that's something that is relevant to just about every district in the state. So that's fun. On September 25th, I believe we have a board meeting, but the Ocean County New Jersey School Boards is holding a meeting in Toms River discussing the spectator code of conduct policy, and they've invited surrounding counties to attend that as well. And then the NJSBA conference is at the end of October, and the delegates meeting is December 7th.
Thank you. Any questions for Allison? Okay. So that brings us to our superintendent's report.
Yes, I just have another hour-long presentation. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Just kidding. So you're paying attention. Okay.
I can end
You can end me with the gavel. I'm just kidding. So it's beginning to look a lot like school time. And if you're getting emails from the districts and alerts and Genesis parent portal opens, there's a lot of hustle and bustle, and it's exciting to see the teachers coming in, starting to set up their classrooms on their last week of their vacations and times off and well-deserved rest. Facilities are moving along, ready, clean, floors are shiny, all the things that are going on. Going back to, this week we have had our new teacher orientation. We welcomed our staff members here who will be joining us. They were thrilled, and what a fantastic group of people. We have on Thursday the 29th, which is tomorrow, we have our new student orientations throughout the district, staggered throughout the time. So if a family has multiple children in different schools, they can all attend. Thursday is also our kindergarten play date, which is a new thing that Mrs. Barr and Mrs. Milano implemented a few years ago, which is a lot of fun. It's a little bit less structured, but the teachers come and they get to meet their classmates and so on at the primary school. Then Tuesday, September 3rd is third grade orientation in the afternoon for parents and students. Then we have our staff orientation day, our welcome program on the 3rd with professional development day on the 4th, and then our kiddos come on the 4th, on the 5th, excuse me, just kidding, 5th. I just want to thank our parents for their patience as we worked through a glitch with the transportation bus stop upload, so that was something that we were able to remedy. I want to thank Mrs. Orozco, our transportation coordinator, Mr. Petrillo, who worked very hard, and we even enlisted Kathy Holland, who came back as a retired to help work through the system, but it was remedied within 24 hours, and we appreciate all the time and effort that was put into fixing everything. So everyone should have be open. Mr. Capasso has been answering parents with regards to logins to get into Genesis, any problems. We want everyone to feel that the first day of school, fun and excitement, and take away the nerves and preparation. So we just want to make sure that everything is good to go. And that concludes my superintendent's report.
So, you're welcome. All right. So there are no information items to draw your attention to. So that brings us to comments from attending constituents on all subjects. And just a reminder, if you're going to speak, please state your name and address for the record.
Rob Scales, 2 Queens Pass. Just one on the public record, the comments made on the Chromebook was me. Ms. Dimes had made a comment that she found the post on Facebook. So with humor, wanted to publicly thank Ms. Dimes for supporting one of our Colts Kids First positions, so thank you. The fact of the matter is the mothers and fathers in Colts Neck are very disappointed. And they're disappointed because the one particular instance, you might have mentioned it, Vinny, which happened 2 years ago. The fact of the matter is we need to be actionable and not reaction. The passwords are predictable. So if we add a 4th line item to the password, let's give our children a little bit more credit. They're probably a little bit more tech savvy than we are, right? They're going to figure that out. So I belong and work for a Fortune 500 company, as most of you do. If we had one of those security advisors come in here and look at what the passwords are for our Chromebooks, it'd be laughable. So the the fact of the matter is, it needs to be a VPN that needs to regenerate every hour or so, right? So if you are familiar with how it works, it's a simple key that a child can use, right? My son, who is in 3rd grade, uses one for separate apps that he uses all the time. It's a very, very easy fix. And we're not worried about external pressures here. We're worried about our children, right? So our children are the ones that figure out this password. There's grades in these emails. They use these emails to communicate with each other. And the particular instance that we spoke about, they addressed it to you, Dr. Garibay, and you had asked the mother to wait until the summer to discuss it. So you had mentioned chain of command last time. So the mother went to the tech advisor. The tech advisor saw the alert from Google that a password was trying to be compromised and just laughed it off. And then it went to the principal of the middle school. And the principal of the middle school said, I cannot go back and ask an administrator to make a change like this because it would cost too much and it would take too much time, which, granted, completely understandable. But it got to a higher level, right? So when we follow this chain of command, we need to make sure that the board and you, Dr. Garibay, are listening, right? So the fact of the matter is that this child was bullied, and these children are bullied back and forth because they're communicating with each other. If someone knows a password, then they easily log into the emails, they can find out the grades, they can see the communication back and forth, and then they use that. The instance that we spoke about, it was at a sleepover, at a girl's sleepover, and they hacked into this poor girl's instance, and they found out what was in there, and they used that to bully her. And the only one that was actually disciplined was the person who hacked in and used that password. None of the other girls that were a part of that sleepover. So we missed a substantial opportunity to educate our children on what that happened. So anyone that's involved in the situation. So what I urge everyone to do is just to go out and look at the technology that's out there for pennies of the dollar that allows a password to be easily generated when a student logs into the system. It's not difficult, and if we continue to just add alphanumeric numbers on any ID that they have or anything along those lines, it's something that could be easily found from another child. So I appreciate you guys looking into this and appreciate you bringing it up this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want me to start?
Nancy, would you like to?
Sure. As always, I always encourage any parent who feels as though they haven't received an appropriate response from me to reach out to me directly. Always. And I always pride myself on responding back to parents and responding accordingly. So I always encourage any parent with any concern to reach out to me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
Hi, Brian Scott. Just a question. So Rob brings up a valid point. How is that digested and like, what's next? Because he presents a lot of strong pieces here. So how is it digested and what's the result of the questions that you just worked forward?
So without speaking for Amy, who is now the chair of communication, typically what would happen, and I believe that this is what would happen, is we listen to our constituents' comments, and then we're going to find a way to improve on this, if it's possible. And as Vinny reported out, after our communications committee, there was more. This was an ongoing conversation. It wasn't just, okay, we talked about it and that's it. It didn't just die right there. We did throw around some other ideas, and as Mary Jane also said, there's more of a conversation that has to be had. This isn't something that we could make a decision on in the committee meeting or bring to the board. We weren't ready for that yet because it is an ongoing conversation. And so what I believe will happen is, whether it's a meeting that happens before the work session, or maybe this is something that can take place during the work session. We have to be careful, though, that we're not putting too much information out during public meetings for security reasons, of course. We don't want to say exactly how we're doing things to keep those passwords and computers secure for our student and staff safety. But this is something that we take seriously, and so we appreciate you bringing it to our attention. And usually what will happen is we make notes, and then we go back and we say, hey, this was mentioned. Can we address this? This is what happened last meeting when Amy did bring this up, and that's why it was a topic of conversation in our committee meeting yesterday. That was the meeting that happened from between the 14th, when it was brought to our attention, and then the meeting was yesterday. So yeah, so there will be a follow-up.
Okay,
whether or not it will happen prior to that work session or during the public work session. So if you're able to come to the next meeting, perhaps it would be on that agenda. I don't want to speak for Amy as the communication chair as far as what her follow-up will be, but it will look something like that. Amy, I don't know if you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, sorry. So that post was sent to me, by someone. I didn't see it myself on Facebook. But I did see, obviously, it was a concern and something that hadn't been brought up as a board member for the last, 2.5 years. And I felt that whenever there is a security issue with children, that it is something that we can address. I certainly would welcome anyone who has more insight than I do. I am not a cybersecurity expert, and I lean into the experts that we do have. So I would be very grateful if we can have some administrators at the meeting, as I mentioned, or as Dr. Garibay had mentioned, it's based on their availability, so we can have those conversations before the next meeting to hopefully have some more insight.
Thank you.
Mr. Scales, if you could email the board with your suggestions that you brought up tonight, we could bring that to our next committee meeting for communications and bring that up to the administrators.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from constituents?
A second comment. You want us to do it? The, just attachment P6, regulation 2200 curriculum content, there's strong recommendation to the board to postpone voting on this policy. If you read, if you had time to read it, it's about 13 to 14 pages, and what it does is it references a New Jersey bylaw and policy that I only get the agenda a couple hours beforehand, so I don't know how it works for all of you, but there are some tremendous vague and loopholes in there, and probably gives you power, Dr. Garibay, I don't know if you necessarily would want to have, right? So for example, what it allows you to do is look at the curriculum and remove bias, right? So for example, it specifically calls out gender, right? So if we specifically call out gender without having any sort of guardrails with that, there's nothing to stop you from looking at a document that titles he or she, and then finding that as a bias to other genders and removing that completely, and then changing those to they and them. So not that you would do that, however, looking, and if you are implementing a policy for the future, if there's another superintendent in the future, it allows a lot of government overreach and a lot of power that is being sent from Trenton that is just unnecessary for our children. A lot of the things in this policy are geared towards the high school, not necessarily for a primary school and a middle school. So I would urge everyone to either postpone it, or if you haven't had time to read it, or to just double check and make sure hopefully that you've had a chance to go through it, because it addresses content that is not relevant for the middle school and the elementary school and the primary school. So,
Thank you for your concern. I will say, so these policies that are on our agenda for this evening, as it states, this is an adoption of these policies. We did the first read last session. Prior to doing these, as I reported out during my policy committee report, not only have we had these, but we've also had our legal team look into everything to make sure that what we have in here is what's needed. Nothing more, nothing less. And on that, these are also already policies that we currently have in place. What we're adopting tonight is not the policy itself. That's already a mandated policy. What the adoption is for specific language changes that have occurred because of updates to New Jersey laws or in legislation. So that policy is in place already. It's not something, we're not voting on the actual policy, we're voting on the update to the language in that policy.
And the language is, that's the point, the language that's been updated, unfortunately, things coming from Trenton and Washington are very politicized, and there should be no bias in schools the way it is, especially from a political standpoint, and what has been changed in that verbiage is geared towards a policy that is very, very far left. So again, I urge everyone to look into it, because it opens up a can of worms, and I'm surprised that if the lawyer looked at it, that they would recommend it, because it's extremely.
It's what keeps our district in compliance with the law, and I don't want to keep a back and forth going, just to belabor everyone's time. Please feel free to reach out to our board, but like I said, all of these policies have been thoroughly vetted by our legal team. Thank you.
May I just make one statement? I cannot change a policy without board authority. So that's why they appear on multiple agendas as a first read and second read. So you made a reference to the superintendent or any superintendent changing a policy. I'm not allowed to do that
Well, you're
without
allowed
board
to change,
agenda.
I'm referencing you're allowed to change the curriculum. So if you read the.
Curriculum is also approved by the Board of Education? Right, so on
You
a
can make
regular
changes
basis.
to that. That's the way, and that's what I'm saying, it's telling you
Okay.
and the policy adoptions that you have the right to make the change, which, as you know, you don't. So that's why I'm saying, if the lawyer had looked at it, then we need to look at this, because there's verbiage in there, and you are referencing to yourself that you don't have the authority and power to do that. So why would we list that in a policy adoption if you don't have the legal authority to do it? That's my.
I appreciate your concern.
Yeah.
Like I said, please feel free to reach back
I
out
will.
if you want to continue
Yep.
that conversation offline. We're happy to do so.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other comments from constituents? All right, being good on. We'll close public comments. Back there. All right. So we'll move on to action items. Angelique, I'm looking for a motion to move action items 1 and 2 on the agenda.
Second.
Any questions or comments about action items 1 and 2 on the agenda?
Yes. Action number 1, why is the disability being eliminated, special class programs?
So at.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, please, sure. So our programs, as I mentioned in my update, that kind of reference it, that whenever we are making any type of program based on IEP needs, whether we're adding a program or eliminating a program, we have to notify the State Department of Education, because it falls into the whole contingency of our offerings for our students with disabilities. So this codifies the fact that we no longer, based on student IEP-driven programs, we no longer have a need for those programs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But if we ever do, we can always bring this back.
We can see it on the board agenda saying we're adding this type of program into our,
So
exactly.
if we ever, in
It's
the middle
fluid.
of the school year, we get a child who does need these programs, we can bring it back without
Correct.
issue.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then may I please have a roll call for action items 1 and 2?
Yes, superintendent, action items. Mrs. Denoya?
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez?
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Whitford?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
All right. Vinnie, I'm looking for a motion to move item number 1 under buildings, grounds, safety, and security.
Motion.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments about buildings and grounds item number 1? All right, Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Buildings and grounds. Mrs. Denoya?
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon?
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes?
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez?
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Whitford?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passed.
Thank you. Brenna, I'm looking for a motion to move items 1 through 4 under curriculum.
Motion to move 4 items on a curriculum.
Second.
Any questions or comments for curriculum items 1 through 4?
Yeah, I have a question for number 3. Dr. Garvey, the Being a Reader curriculum, what does that consist of?
So the Being a Reader curriculum is, we started that program at the primary school last year, and so this was an adoption, we extended it this year. So it is more of a literacy, or of our literacy program. We were looking to enhance our, Being a Reader is the next level for the company that we currently use, so it's the newer adoption of the curriculum resources that we have here. So you mean in terms of what does it entail? Like, your ELA literacy is really what it is, yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment on item number 3. In reviewing the data with the state testing, we saw that there was a considerable uptick in the performance scores with using the targeted intervention, right? What I'd like to see this district with our funds is continue to implement those programs. I don't agree with the mindfulness curriculum. I'd like to vote no against that, but I don't want to vote no to the Being a Reader, so could that be separated from my vote, or you have to vote no?
Separated out?
I mean, I
I know
would
we
like to
have
vote
in the
no for
past.
just the bottom portion for the 8th grade level.
I I mean, we can, this is an elective program, that it's not a required program, it's an elective from students based on their, of what they
But
wanted to do.
still funds are put into this, correct? Yeah, I'd still like to vote no to it.
We can separate
You
it
can
out.
separate that out, right?
So the, sorry, Dr. Deputy, so the public knows, can you extend on the mindfulness curriculum, what that entails?
Sure. Mindfulness is a part of a program with regards to self-regulation and taking a pause. And we've seen students with anxiety. We've seen great responses with that. We've seen in terms of, it's about the concept of taking a pause, not being reactionary, communication, but most importantly, it's self-regulation. So, which we've seen through the years, we had mindfulness through the district for a while. Working with teachers and their practices and de-escalating things between students, and just communication and self-regulation is really what it is.
Thank you. And you
You're
mentioned it's elective.
It's an elective.
Is elective with parental approval or just the child's approval?
At 8th grade level, they needed parents' approval for
Thank
their
you.
electives.
All right, any other questions or comments?
So are we separating for Mr. Marasco, 3 and 4?
Yes, yeah, I think that's,
So 3A and
Just
maybe
say,
yes?
well, sure. You could just say no on
Yeah.
a certain one, or yes
Okay.
means all.
Yes means all, or yes and no. I thought we can, rather than say, taking two separate
Okay,
motions.
yes, just yes, and then I'll just.
yeah,
Mhm.
say no for my rest.
Mhm.
All right, can I please have a roll call?
Yes, on curriculum and instruction items 1 through 4, Mrs. Denoria,
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon,
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes to all of them, no to, the second part of number 3, mindfulness curriculum.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh,
Yes to all of them except number 3, mindfulness curriculum, no.
Mr. Wickberg.
Yes.
Okay, the motion did carry.
All right, thank you. Can I please have a motion to move finance items 1 through 3 on the agenda?
Motion.
Motion. Second.
Amy, second.
All right, any questions or comments about finance items 1 through 3 on the agenda? All right, Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Yes, finance 1 through 3, Mrs. Denoria,
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon,
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Wickberg.
Yes.
Thank you, the motion passed.
Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to move items 1 through 2 under policy.
Motion.
Second.
All right, any questions or comments about policy items 1 or 2 on the agenda? No? All right, Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Yes, policy. Mrs. Denoria,
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon,
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta,
Yes.
Mrs. Volpe,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes.
Mr. Wickberg.
Yes.
The motion passed.
Thank you. All right, personnel. This always throws me off. There is so many. All right, looking for a motion to
Busy
move
time.
items 1 through 10 under personnel.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or comments about personnel items 1 through 10 on the agenda?
I'd like to make a comment, for number 8, I just want to reiterate again, I voted no to this in the last meeting. I definitely feel that our.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's okay. I definitely feel that, the 78,000 plus, benefits for this counselor, I certainly don't think we need, an additional counselor to implement the SELF program here. I felt the district was more than equipped with having a counselor at each district, and, I will be voting a second time no to item number 8.
All right, thank you. Anyone else, any questions or comments? All right, Vince, may I please have a roll call?
Yes, personnel items 1 through 10. Mrs. Denoria,
Yes.
Mrs. Dillon,
Yes.
Mrs. Dimes,
Yes.
Mrs. Ramirez,
Yes.
Mr. Rignetta.
Yes, so over number 10, I'm going to recuse due to my employment.
I'm sorry, recuse on,
Number 10.
thank you. Mrs. Volpe,
Yes, to all but, number 8, second time voting no.
Walsh?
Yes to everything with the exception of 8. I voted no to begin with the position, so I'm voting no for number 8.
Mr. Wickberg? The motion carried.
Thank you. All right, so that brings us to any new business that anyone on the board would like to bring up?
I just have a comment, I just wanted to say thank you again, because I think the amount of work that you put in over these last couple of weeks trying to get these committees, lines up the way that they are. You have 2 little kids at home, a newborn and a toddler. I know it takes a lot to call every single member and touch base, and the fact that you asked about schedules.
Maybe helps a little bit.
Oh, okay, all right. That's, I mean, you can take some credit, but I really appreciate the fact that the schedules were looped into the decision-making. I'm really sad to be off buildings and grounds, but I also completely understand because of the schedules, so just wanted to say thank you. I know a lot of work went into it, and it's not easy.
I appreciate you saying so. Thank you, Brenna. Any other new business? All right, well then on that note, motion to adjourn.
Motion. Second.
Vincent?
All in favor?
I'll second.
Okay.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you,
Meeting is
everyone. Have a
adjourned.
great night. Get home safe.
I just have one question for you. It is so much warmer over here than it is over there. It's like it is.
All right, I'll see you guys. Bye.
I'm freezing.
Pick one, go somewhere.
No, I appreciate it. Say it right to